Hi guys, Kat here. Welcome back to my channel, Catadactyl. Today I am doing the first half of my September wrap-up. So my wrap-ups have gotten pretty long because I have just been in a really great reading mood recently. So I've decided to chop my reading this month in half. So far this month I think I have read 7 or 8 books, and I'm just going to talk about them in the order that I read them. So let's just get right on into it. So the first book that I read this month was Borne by VanderMeer. This book is amazing. Straight off the bat, I gave it 5 stars. So it follows a woman named Rachel who is a scavenger in kind of a post-apocalyptic world, and she hunts through the ruins of the city to find things that would ease her and her partner Wick in their life. So the world has kind of been left in the wake of the implosion of something known as the company. One of the products of the company was something called Mord, which is a gigantic flying bear. And the best place to scavenge is actually from Mord's fur. So when it opens, Rachel is scavenging on Mord, and she pulls off a little purple fuzz, and it turns out to be what she names Borne. From there, Borne is a creature that is neither plant nor animal, and Rachel struggles with how to interact with Borne as a being in of itself within their unit, her, Wick, and Borne, and also within the world that they inhabit. So this book made me laugh. It really tugged at my heartstrings, and it definitely made me cry a bunch. And the reason it has so many stars is because I thought it was just wildly original, and a lot of the elements in this book have a lot of staying power. I've read 7 books since this book, and elements of this book are still resonating with me, and I'll still be thinking about it as I go throughout my day. So I'm really keen to pick up VanderMeer's other works. I know he wrote a trilogy, the Southern Reach trilogy, I believe. Have you read it? Is it really good? I will definitely be picking that up because I loved this book. So the next book that I read this month is Illegal Contact by Santino Hassell. So I don't normally talk about romance books that I read on here, but I really want to mention this one because 1, it was really good, and 2, it was written by one of my favorite queer romance writers. So basically this book follows a footballer, and his name is Gavin. He is a tight end for the New York City Barons, and he was in a brawl. So he is confined to his house for a few months. So they need someone to basically run the errands and do the chores for Gavin. So they interview a bunch of people, and the person who is the worst for the job is Noah. So Noah walks in, and he doesn't even know who Gavin is. He doesn't even watch sports. He's just there because he's desperately poor, he has a lot of debt from college, and his father just lost his job. Basically, he insults Gavin to his face and says, "I don't know who you are," and basically walks out. And then, lo and behold, later, he ends up having to help and take care of Gavin. And things kind of go from there. You would think that football would be an amazing, huge part of this book, and it is a part, but I don't know football that well, and I got along just fine. There is a lot of tension and a lot of dynamics with not just Gavin and Noah, but also Noah's family especially. Also Gavin's teammates. They're really well developed. I love how Santino Hassell develops his characters. So if you're looking for a queer romance that also has football, then I really recommend it. I give it 4 stars. Okay, so next up I read a trilogy called Ironbreakers by Zaya, Feli. So I found out about this trilogy when I was watching, I think Fairy Drugs was talking about cheap e-books, and it's true. The first in this series is free, and then the next 2 in the trilogy are $1. So I thought, well, there's nothing much to lose. So I popped the first book on my Kindle, and I gave it a go, and I was hooked. So we follow Renfrain, who is the bastard son of the queen, and he has 2 brothers, and he has never met his father, although the king does treat him as his own. So as the book opens, the middle son of the queen, Ren's younger brother, is having his 20th birthday celebration, which means that he is now capable of ruling if something should happen to his father. And Ren is really disheartened because he is being sent away to deal with negotiations with another country. But luckily for Ren, the ship that was going to take him to the negotiations, there's a shipwreck, and so he can't go. So he is instead sent to his room to deal with paperwork involving the negotiation. But, of course, he slips out of his room to go to the celebration and see his brother. But his youngest brother, who he doesn't get on that well with, sees him and says, "I'm going to tell Dad that you're out and you're not doing your duties, if you don't go down in the dungeon and see the new prisoner that a visiting country brought. So without any further choice, he goes down into the dungeons to see who this guy is, why he's there. He's like, hey, who are you? The other guy's like, oh, my name is Anik. He's like, why are you here? Anik's like, I don't know. And he's like, okay, great. So he goes back upstairs to talk to his brother. So he goes back upstairs to join the celebrations, but the neighboring kingdom's king tells everyone that Anik is Ren's own slave. So they bring Anik up to perform, and they find a bloody knife in his belt. And it turns out that the king and the son that was heir apparent have been murdered. And of course, since it is Ren's slave, they put the blame on Ren and Anik. So in the morning, guards smuggle them out, and they flee for their lives. And everything goes from there. Overall, I gave the first book 3.5 stars because I feel like there was a lot of world building that had to happen. So action and sexual tension kind of took a backseat. And then in the next 2 books, it really ramped up and was so good. A lot of the things that I thought would be cliche didn't happen. So like I got to a point and I was like, oh my god, I know what's gonna happen. And then it didn't happen. And I was like, well, okay, good on you, author, you got me. So if you're looking for a trilogy that doesn't cost that much and is really high-paced and has some queer romance for you, then I would recommend this. So the next book I read is H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. So this is a piece of nonfiction that she wrote about her life following her father's death. In a way, kind of coping with her grief, she decides to raise a goshawk. And goshawks are known for being very mercurial and very difficult to raise and very temperamental. She's dealing with raising her bird Mabel, and she is dealing with her father's own past and the history of falconry and her own place in society. She also talks about global warming and the history of a man's world in Britain especially. And I just found this book so vastly interesting. One of the things I found most interesting was she weaved in a lot of narrative about the life of T.H. White. So T.H. White, if you don't know, wrote The Sword and the Stone, which is the first in the Once and Future King series, which talks about Merlin and the rise of King Arthur from when he was a child. She brings up the point that T.H. White was known as a homosexual man and a sadist, and in his time he could not explore those things, and he had real trouble coming to grips with those things about himself. And one of the ways he did it was through falconry. And it's so interesting because as she's weaving through her life and coming to terms with her grief and how brutal and how angry she is at the world, and T.H. White in his struggle against the society that he lived in, it's just amazing. The Sylvan scenes in this book were just amazing. I want to go to Britain. I want to see those things. The falconry bits were amazing. The representation of man and homosexuality in nature versus society, industrialization versus global warming and taking care of the earth and remembering where we come from and remembering how we treat other creatures was just done so well. I feel like the explanation and the exploration was done so lyrically that it just swept me off my feet completely. So I give this book 4.5 stars, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so the last book I'm going to talk about for this halfway wrap-up is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. So I feel like I don't need to go into depth about why this book is so amazing, because I think a lot of people have read it, obviously, but the one thing that I'm going to say that totally swayed me, because the first book, my main problem was that I was not on that ship. I was not at all about it. So, second book, I was like, yes, oh my god, yes. And just so many elements of the plot got so much more interesting, and I feel like either her word choices in the first book were extremely lucky, which I doubt, or she is very skilled, which I am pretty sure that's the case. And there were so many breadcrumbs in the first book that when she explored them and unraveled them in the second book, I was like, oh my god, you're amazing! And yeah, I have a 3-day weekend coming up this weekend, so I'm gonna read the third book this weekend. So overall, I give it 4.5 glorious stars, and yeah, I am all about this new ship. it is the ship of ships, and I'm so happy. So yeah, let me know what you think if you have any questions about these books, and yeah, I will do the second half of my wrap-up at the end of the month as per usual. Thanks so much for watching, and happy reading! Bye!